Now, how'd you do that? It's simple, really. Just calculate the speed and trajectory as well as the distance and. Okay, never mind. Forget everything I said. I don't actually know calculus and trigonometry and whatever that is. We're hunting like that from now on, okay? No complaints? Great. They had traveled on foot through the forest for 5 days, heading southwest. Being alone with Blake for that long, scavenging in the woods and hunting owls, hawks, and the occasional wildcat the size of a cow was interesting. They had only encountered one such feline, but it had escaped before they could shoot it. Arda felt out of place, having passed the 2-week limit he usually had on each planet. He was still struggling to comprehend it. Alright, that was a lie. He could comprehend it perfectly well. He just couldn't figure out the whys and hows. It unsettled him, and it felt unbelievably weird that he could now do anything on Zeta without a ticking clock counting down to when he would inevitably leave. Except now, it was possibly worse, because he wasn't actually sure if the launch was gone permanently or if it would pop up again at some random point in time. He had never been this paranoid. He couldn't believe he was paranoid. He really was developing a personality, wasn't he? His odd behavior turned out to be quite obvious when Blake had asked, the morning after his planned and failed launch, "Arda, you've been quieter than usual and you haven't been scolding me as much as I thought you would when I turned up as a freezing flying burrito at night. You had enough sense to bring the blanket, and sending you back wouldn't be the logical choice, so there's no need to scold you," Arda replied, tending to the quickly dying flames. They'd set up a camp in a rare thick cluster of trees, and, quite miraculously, started a fire under the shelter of the branches. A forest fire wasn't even possible given the circumstances, and Arda was surprised the lighter even worked on the small pile of dried needles and leaves. "I still can't believe you called me a freezing flying burrito." Blake grinned at him, but it seemed more worried than anything. The blanket was wrapped around both of them, which the blondes had been reluctant about. Arda wasn't going to risk Blake getting hypothermia. Is that a side effect of a developing personality? Metaphors? Metaphors are a regular integral part of the English language, Arda pointed out. Its usage typically has nothing to do with personalities. Blake rolled his eyes, but he quickly fixed them back on Arda, the worry replacing the previously cheerful sparkle. "Arda, what did you find back there, back at the Imperialist camp?" Arda stared at Blake. "It had nothing to do with you, so you shouldn't worry. I'm fine, I just need time to..." The gray-eyed Norsphere leaned over and put a hand on Arda's shoulder, forcing him to look at him. "Arda, please, be honest. Don't try to change the subject. What did you find?" Arda had never seen this side of him. He'd caught glimpses of the serious, mature, responsible Blake, who many people considered the second-in-command in Sector 8. But this felt like Blake had peeled back a layer in his demeanor, revealing a part of his true self, or at least a different part of his usual silly personality. He gazed into Arda's eyes with an intensity that made Arda hesitant. "The eyes are the windows to the soul." The owner of that quote had long been lost to history, even with Arda's knowledge. It could be attributed to many people, including English poet, playwright, and writer William Shakespeare, who influenced just about every aspect of the very essence of English. But apart from that, the original speaker was unknown. Either way, Arda, who had never really quite understood the quote, now finally saw what it meant. Knowing and understanding are two very, very different things, after all. It was one thing to know things, and another to understand it to the deepest extent, the core of the idea. It was the first time he understood that particular quote. He didn't know if it was thanks to his apparently developing personality or not. Blake's age had nothing on Arda, he knew. But somehow, just then, Blake seemed nearly just as mature, just as knowledgeable, and even more wise than the not quite human. Blake had lived his entire life like a human, with emotional challenges, physical changes, and mental obstacles, all of which he needed to learn and overcome and forced to move on. Blake experienced life infinitely differently. He understood life, while Arda just knew it. Arda knew, but never quite realized, that Blake was possibly, on the subject of the unpredictable human nature, even more knowledgeable than him. Me, Arda finally said. I found myself. Blake gave him a weird look, but didn't comment, sensing that Arda wasn't done. He gave him a few moments of silence to think. Arda continued. I found a file with records of me, of what I know of. Arda stared helplessly into the dying flames at the thought of it. It had my exact descriptions. Blake also turned to stare into the fire, thinking. So that's how the Imperialists knew about you. He paused. Wait, that doesn't make sense. You've been traveling in space for all your life, right? And I thought you would have landed here at some point in time. We would definitely have records of someone like you landing here, unless that's what the file said. He wasn't quite sure if that was a compliment or an insult, but he let it go for now. Arda shook his head. I don't know. Well, I know I haven't landed here before, as far as I'm concerned. The files were of me, and being conducted experiments on, it said nothing of me being a foreign entity. And it's odd because never have I ever been to a planet with any information on myself, combined with the fact that I can't seem to launch anymore. The blonde sighed and untied his hair, readjusting his visor and sat back against a tree trunk, crossing his arms. Well, I only see one solution that would satisfy all the variables. He looked at Arda. That you are from Zeta. Arda had been suspecting that as well. It was the most plausible answer given the information. He poked at the flames again, strategically, and the fires burned a little more fiercely. It would still die out quickly, though. That's the problem. I don't know if I am, and I don't think I can be from here. Blake raised an eyebrow. What do you mean by that? And the fact that you never move your hands or make any sort of gestures when you talk is freaking me out, I just realized. Habits are tied in with personality, and I have neither, Arda pointed out. Have you not wondered why I know all the stuff that I do, why I can speak your language? Because I don't just remember learning any of it. I just know. I just do. It felt weird pouring all of this out to someone else, especially someone else who he'd only known for 2 weeks, who was practically a stranger. He didn't know what their relationship was. Some might call it a friendship, though he would beg to differ. It was a bit of a stretch, friendship, but they weren't quite acquaintances. The dynamic felt too close for that. Perhaps something in between. Either way, Arda had never told anyone else about his situation. He had never consulted another living being, and he never felt so weirdly calm about doing it. Was he not afraid Blake would act oddly? Perhaps, if he could feel. But logically, it would be a bit of a risk for someone else to know so much about him. Originally, he wouldn't have cared as much, because he would be gone before it could be used against him. Now it was different. Everything was different. Everything he did would have a lasting impact on him, as well as everyone and everything else. Well, doesn't that just solidify my theory that you are from Zeta? Blake asked, raising a shoulder before dropping it. That doesn't explain what you are, though. Arda shook his head. No, Blake. I can't be from Zeta despite everything I know, because the things that I know are all from another planet, a planet called Earth. I know everything the humans on that planet knew, the history of it, the science, literature, government, geography, cultures, everything. It's similar to Zeta, but there are too many differences. I can't be from Zeta. Two planets just happen to have evolved almost exactly the same, that's all. And my earliest real memory was just of me floating in space. I don't know what planet I'm from, but it can't be Zeta. There was a long pause in the conversation. If you say so, Blake finally said. He sighed. I was just speculating. This really is troubling. They'd be hunting for your knowledge once they realize I'm not coming back. You know that, right? Arda didn't need to respond, but he did so anyway. Yes, I know.